Appreciate that. We got some volume going on here. I'm going to need help with volume today. I visited with 6 of my grandchildren 2 weeks ago, and they were coming off of having the crud and gave it to me. So I've been on antibiotics for a week, and I'm just hoping my voice can push on through for 3 hours worth here today. But it's very encouraging to see this number of people here. Now, just everything we do, you're going to be able to see on the screen. If you're close enough, you can see what's on there. Fine. If you're not close enough, you probably need to move on up a little bit. We're going to do 3 sessions this morning and take a break between. First session will be kind of short. Second session will be kind of long and pretty interactive. And the third session we'll try to tie everything together before we're dismissed. My goal to have you ready to go at noon, and should be able to do that. I got into teacher training a long time ago. It's when I first went into 21st century and started working with curriculum. There's been a pretty big shift in curriculum in my lifetime, and probably in yours. Just the way it looks, the style of teaching has changed a lot. And we had new curriculum, and we didn't have anybody who knew how to teach it. So we had calls coming in all the time. I bought your new stuff, and I can't figure out what in the world I'm supposed to do with it in the classroom. So we want to sell material. So I figured I need to get out and help people understand how to use the curriculum that we have. So put together a teacher training program and then offered it to anybody who would invite. And I've done this for 20 years now. I've been in like 25 different states, several churches in those states. I've returned to the same congregation for 2 or 3 workshops at those places, and been able to meet with a lot of people in a lot of different corners of the church, from Florida to Washington State, from Boston to Los Angeles, and just about everywhere in between. And been able to meet with the people who are actually using the curriculum and trying to make it work, and getting feedback from them to help us make it better. And it's been a good experience over the years. I grew up on teacher training workshops, and maybe some of you did too, back in the day when curriculum was pretty lean. Child curriculum in the classroom, there wasn't a whole lot to it. It was true, false, fill in the blank, and you were done. And teachers had to really scramble to be able to come up with enough material to take the class time. But today's curriculum is really different. It is so well resourced that there's more stuff than you could ever do in one class period. And you get to pick and choose the parts of the lesson that you think your class needs the most, and go with that. And you can switch it up from week to week with different kinds of activities. So the early teacher training activities that I was a part of, it was like, hey, we're going to come together. We got a lady that knows 20 different lessons to do with paper plate and cotton balls. And, she'd go through 20 different lessons on, here's a paper plate. If you cut it this way and put the cotton balls on here, then you can tell this Bible story. And then she'd move on to the next one. Here's another paper plate and more cotton balls, and you can do it this way. And, you went home and you did the cotton ball lessons, and that was about all you got. But what I've tried to develop in this teacher training series is more of the principles. Instead of giving you one gimmick that you can take home, make sure we understand the principles of teaching. And if we understand that, we can take that back to our classrooms, whether it's children or teens or adults. We can take that back to the classroom, and most teachers can figure out a way to make it work. So it's kind of like the old Chinese proverb, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. So early teacher training was giving fish. Hopefully this teacher training is teaching you how to use the tools that are available to you. I like being around educators. It's a good bunch of people, usually pretty innovative folks, whether it's church or public education, folks who figure out a way to get it done. And I like that. I like that kind of attitude in the church, everywhere else too. You may have heard the story that I heard years ago. It was a preacher story, so I don't know if it's true or not. Okay, that's a dig, Caleb. But it came out of the northwest part of the country, and it was a small Christian school. And there was a lady who was the middle school principal. And, you know, middle school is kind of tough anyway. You know, you got the little bitty girls that nothing has hit yet, and then you got, at the same age, you got girls who are just turning into women all of a sudden. And, you know, it's such a transition in that middle school age. Well, one of the middle school girls in this Christian school grew up and got interested in boys, got interested in makeup and looking nice and everything else. And so every time they'd get a bathroom break, she would go into the girls' restroom and she'd pull out her little pocketbook and she had a tube of lipstick and she'd put fresh lipstick on every time they got a bathroom break. And somebody had taught her that the way you blot your lipstick is that you kiss the mirror. Okay? And so she did that. You know, she'd put fresh lipstick on, she'd kiss the mirror. Well, it wasn't long because she was a popular girl, the other girls started doing it too. And by the end of the day, there were lipstick prints all over every girl's restroom mirror in the whole school. And the janitor was having a fit. So he went to the middle school principal and he said, hey, you know, it's taken me an extra hour and a half every day just to get all the lipstick off the mirrors in the girls' restrooms. You got to do something. You got to pay me more. Something has to change. And she said, okay, I'll take care of it this afternoon. So that afternoon, just before time to dismiss for the day, she got on the intercom and she called a meeting of all the girls into the largest girls' bathroom. This is a small Christian school. They could do it. Crammed them in there and brought the janitor in with them. And the principal said, ladies, as you can see, we have a little bit of a problem here. We've got lipstick all over the mirrors in this bathroom and in every bathroom in the building. And Mr. Johnson has to clean this up every day. And I know you don't mean to make his job hard, but I just thought if you could see how hard he had to work to clean these mirrors, you might find a different way to blot your lips. And so, Mr. Johnson, show these young ladies what you have to do to clean these mirrors. And he went into the first stall and got a toilet brush and came back out and started working on it. And problem gone. I mean, you know, that's an educator. That's somebody who figures out how to solve a problem. So I really like that. And I like that most educators are good at figuring out the best way to get the message across, the best way to change behavior, and they get it done. And that's what you are. You are teachers, and you are shaping the lives of young and old. You're changing behavior, and what you're doing is a big deal in the kingdom. So let me take you through a little exercise first. We live in a time of rapid change. You've got notes that you can take as we go through here. Tried to write most of the words where you wouldn't have to do a whole lot. We live in a time of rapid change. So here's a little quiz for us. How long did it take to get 50 million of these things in the United States? Okay? So start with the radio. When radio was invented, how long do you think it took to get 50 million homes in the U.S. with radios? Give me a guess. 5? 70? All right, how about 38? Kind of in the middle. 38 years to get 50 million radios in homes. Well, we did radio for a while and television was invented. How long do you think it took to get 50 million televisions in homes? Okay, only took 13 years. We're a little faster now. Okay, internet. Only took 4 years to get the internet in 50 million homes. The iPod for listening to music. What do you think? About 3 years on that one. And then Facebook to get in 50 million homes. Only 2 years. So what I want you to see in this is that we live in a time where change is coming faster and faster all the time. It used to be that things stayed the same for a long time, but the longer we live, the faster things change. If you own a cell phone, you know how quick it's outdated. If you own a laptop, you know how quickly it's outdated. The technology changes, it goes on to something else. Same way with televisions and every kind of electronics we get into. About the time you figure it out, it changes. And we are just changing faster and faster and faster. And it's hard to keep up. And especially the older you are, the harder it is to keep up. That young people are doing a better job of it than we are. So these same paradigm shifts of things speeding up in our world have affected what we're trying to do as teachers in the church. So let me look at just a few areas where rapid change is really impacting Christian education. Just in my lifetime, and I'm an old guy, but just in my lifetime, I've seen such a great shift in how we do church and how we do Sunday school. I grew up in the church in Nashville. And I grew up in a time when the classroom was very teacher-centered. The teacher controlled everything in the classroom. The teacher told you when to talk. You didn't talk unless you were called on, and you weren't called on unless you raised your hand. And everything was orderly, and the teacher was in full control of the classroom. But we moved to a time where students want to have a more active part in the class. That's just the way today's culture is. They think they ought to be able to run as much of it as you do. And so it's challenged some of our teaching that you can't do it. If you try to do it the old way, the way I was raised with, you'll find resistance on the part of your students. That you don't talk unless I tell you can talk. You don't answer a question unless I can tell you. It's time for you to answer a question. And so times have changed. When I was in college, Carl McKelvey taught some religious education classes, and I had one of his, and he gave me, he gave the class a little rhyme to help us understand the philosophy of teaching in my day. And here it is. Ram it in, cram it in, children's heads are hollow. Ram it in, cram it in. There's a whole lot more to follow. And that was the philosophy of teaching. You come sit down in my class, I'll screw the top of your head off, and I'll just cram in everything I can until 2 bells ring. Then you put the lid back on and get out of here. And that was the philosophy of teaching. Ram it in, cram it in, children's heads are hollow. Ram it in, cram it in, there's a whole lot more to follow. Well, we're learning, and the church is somehow always slow to learn. You remember a guy named Phil Donahue? Used to be on television. Yeah, he kind of changed everything in television. Up until then, The Tonight Show and all the talk shows were a host and a guest. And the host would ask the guest a question, and the guest would answer. And the host would ask the guest another question, and the guest would answer. Phil Donahue was all over the audience with a microphone. He'd talk, what do you think about that? And he'd be right there. And everybody in the audience had an opinion. And it worked. And now the late night shows are doing some of that too. They're getting up in the audience, or they're getting out on the street to get people's opinions. Because everybody, this day and time, has an opinion. Everybody wants to give their 2 cents on everything. And even the people in your class, your Bible class, they feel like they have something to share, and they want to give their opinion. And if you don't value their opinions, pretty soon you'll find they're not there anymore. Because in our culture, everybody wants their opinions to be valued. So if you're the kind of teacher who says, sit down, be quiet, I've got a lot to share with you, and when I'm done, the bell will ring and you can go, you're going to have trouble with a new generation of young people coming up, because they feel they have a right to share what they want to share. Sometimes it's good stuff, sometimes it's not good stuff. But they feel they have the right to share. And they're attracted to teachers who give them that opportunity. So that's a shift from my day to today. It's totally changed. Here's another shift. From Bible knowledge to life skills. The church that I was raised in was probably like most churches across the country. We were big on Bible facts. That we knew how many people were on the ark. We knew who they were. We knew how many days for this and how many nights for that. And we knew all the Bible facts. And when we got through with our little fill-in-the-blank true-false lessons, that's what we did for the last 15 minutes of class. We drilled. We had Bible drills. And so you could ask any obscure fact, and most of the kids in my class growing up could give you the answer to those obscure Bible facts. The problem was, when they grew up and they went off to school or off to work, those facts didn't matter a whole lot. They didn't have a clue what to do with them. They had no way to apply. There were 8 people on the ark. Okay, that's great. But it doesn't help me in my daily life at all. So I had a lot of friends that I graduated from high school with who went off to college, and that they were solid kids growing up in church, in Sunday school, and they had their faith just decimated in college because it wasn't because they didn't have Bible knowledge, it's because they didn't have a clue what to do with it. They didn't know how to have a clue how to make it practical. How do I get this into my regular life? I don't have people out on the street I'm bumping into and saying, how many people were on the ark, But it's other real life issues that they found mattered, and they didn't have the answers to it. And I lost a lot of good friends. Satan got them because they had Bible knowledge, but they didn't have a clue what to do with it. And that's partly on teachers. That teachers, Bible knowledge is great. I love Bible knowledge. But Bible knowledge without practical application is not very useful. So teachers in my day didn't understand that. But we have learned and are learning that we need to build Bible skills into what we're doing as well. Here's another one. I grew up in a time of uniformity. And now it's a time of options and flexibility. I grew up in a time when Gospel Advocate Quarterly was what was used in every Sunday school class in Churches of Christ. And we could go on vacation. I'd never miss a lesson. We went to church in another city, in another state. They'd be on the same lesson. And that teacher would teach it exactly like my teacher did. That, here, read verse 1, you read verse 2, you read verse 3. Okay, you take question 1, you take question 2. Okay, and around the room. And everybody, it was all uniform. Everywhere you went, it was this one style of teaching, and that was it. But now it's all about, I want to do it my way. I want to have options. I want to explore new avenues of learning. And so we've had to adapt to the different needs of a different generation. So uniformity is what it was. Options and flexibility is what it has become. One more. When I was young, information came from the top down. The adults knew way more than the kids did. The adults had access to the information. The adults had read more stuff, had studied more stuff than any of us kids. But in today's world, especially with the internet, and I experienced this with our two boys as they were growing up, that I had books everywhere. I mean, I've always loved Bible study books, commentaries, and I've had a house full of them. And if I wanted to know something, I could go find the right book, and I could look it up, and I could read a while, and I could find the answer. But my boys could go to the internet, and they had an answer just about like that. And while I'm still trying to find the right book, they've already found the answer. And that's our generation today, that the younger generation is so computer literate that they get to information a whole lot faster than I do, a whole lot faster than my generation does. And I get left behind. And I find myself, it's the joke, if you want to know how to program your VCR, come on. You want to learn how to program something to record a show for you, ask one of your grandkids to help you, because there's no chance I'm going to figure it out. But they've got that. So now information, we have to realize, those of us who are older have to realize that a lot of good information comes from the bottom up. That as a teacher, I can learn a lot from my students. I'm trying to teach them from my experience, and they can teach me from their world things that I don't know. And so the classroom, instead of it all being top down, that I've got all the information, you sit there, you be quiet, you listen, I'll tell you. Now it's more of an exchange, up and down. That students are sharing information that I need as a teacher, and I'm sharing information that they need as students. So all these things are changing. I'm just trying to show you in this first session that we live in really changing times. It's challenging. It's challenging to be a teacher in this day and time, but we're doing it. And we're going to learn to do it a little bit better. I love this quote from Alvin Toffler. The illiterate of the future are not those who cannot read or write. They are those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. I'm illiterate today because I'm slow to unlearn my old ways and relearn new ways. And if I'm going to keep up in today's world, I have to be willing to unlearn some ways of doing things and relearn new ways. So let me give you a few ideas about the mindset of the new generation that we're trying to reach. And here there are a list of 20 or 25 of these. I boiled it down to 5. 5 I think that are major for us as teachers to be aware of today. And here's the first one. They have rejected the church, but not necessarily God. That there are a lot of young people who don't want to have anything to do with church anymore. But don't mistake that for thinking that they don't love God, they don't care about God, they're not interested in God, because most of them are. But they've lost confidence for whatever reason in the church. And some of it is justified, some of it is not justified. Some of it has been molded by media. But whatever it is, it's the reality. It's the reality that we're dealing with, that they've rejected the church. But they haven't necessarily rejected God, and they're still very interested in spiritual things. And it's why if you turn on television today, I can't hardly watch primetime major network television from 7 till 10 o'clock anymore. I mean, there's nothing on there that interests me. But in the little bit that I've picked up on that, there's so many shows that are exploring spiritual dimensions of people who have special powers, of people who can transcend time, people who can read thoughts, people with all kinds of special powers. And this is coming out of the fact that the new generation of people is very interested in spiritual things. They just don't quite know how to connect it with God and the church. Okay? And that's a challenge for us as teachers. So many have rejected the church, but not necessarily God. You're going to get to talk some next time, okay? And it's going to help me too. All right, number 2. They prefer to process new information through dialogue. This is back to the Phil Donahue thing again, that most people today don't want to be told what to do or how to do it. They want to have a dialogue about it. They want you to tell them a little bit and let them try it a little bit and let them ask you some questions and let you guide them along. But they don't want to just be told how to do something. They want it to be a shared event, that there's some dialogue going on here. And that's different from the church I grew up in. Third thing, they have little or no denominational loyalty. And I hear this all across the country. You know, my kids, my grandkids, I raised them in the church. I had them there every time the doors were open, and now they're at some off-brand something, and I don't know what's going on over there. And how can they do that? You know, I raised them to be right here. And now they're into something totally different. And what we're finding out is this is not just a church thing. It's a general shift in our culture that the younger generation does not have denominational loyalty, doesn't have brand loyalty to hardly anything. When I was little, my dad, every time he needed to fill up his car, he went to his friend Leon, who owned a Texaco station. And it didn't matter if it was 3 cents a gallon more at Leon's than it was across the street or around the corner. He went to Leon's Texaco every time. My mother went to the same grocery store every week. And it didn't matter if they had the best sales, but that's where she shopped. And she knew the people. And she knew the butcher. And she knew the guy in produce. And you know, it was a loyalty thing. That you stayed where you were. That, you know, I'm a loyal customer. Well, that's a thing of the past. That if you pay me to be a loyal customer, I'll be a loyal customer. If you give me enough rewards, I'll be a loyal customer. But if somebody else comes along and gives me better rewards, they're my new best friend. And it's happened in church too. That you're my church today until the church down the street starts offering something better for me, for my kids, for somebody, and then we're out of here. And there is very little loyalty to what you've been brought up in, the friends that you've had for a long time. It's just our culture. So we have to figure that out, and we have to not get our feelings hurt and take it personally. That you know, they used to be here, and then they just church down the street offered a free biscuit on Sunday morning, and now they're there, and you know, hey, don't get your feelings hurt. I mean, it's not you. It's just a change in our culture and the way they're thinking, and they're looking for the next newest, best, free thing. So we have to learn to deal with that. Number 4. God has become generic, but Jesus is still specific. That when you talk about God to people, they can have anything in the world in their mind. They can think Buddha, they can think Krishna, they can think Allah. They got all kinds of pictures of God. But when you talk about Jesus, you're talking about a specific man. And that's where it goes from generic to specific. And I'm afraid we've gotten caught in the trap of trying to talk God to people who define God a whole lot differently than we do. We need to talk about Jesus. It's the name of Jesus that the apostles preached. It's the name of Jesus. It's what Jesus does that makes the difference. And we need to shift back in that direction. Jesus is specific. One more. They have serious trust issues. And a lot of this has been built in by media and some real facts going on in our world. I'm old enough that I lived through the Nixon stuff. I am not a crook. Yeah, you are. Sorry to tell you, but yeah, you are. And then all the other scandals that just continue to come out. And the media just feeds on these things. And it has created a generation that doesn't trust anything establishment. Doesn't trust the church, doesn't trust the government, doesn't trust anything establishment. And because church is typically thrown in there with establishment, we get treated with a lot of cynicism and a lot of doubt as to our motives. All right, give you those 5. We're getting close to the end of this session. We'll get a break here in a minute. All right, new attitudes toward church attendance. And I think we've all seen this. We talked about it last night at supper. So many churches have thrown the towel in on Sunday night and Wednesday night. Sunday school on Sunday morning has lost a lot of its emphasis. Just come to worship. Do worship once a week and you're good. Punch your ticket for that and you're good. But the thing is, regular attendance has become irregular. I mean, that is regular attendance today. That if you poll most churches and ask for their trends about church attendance, they would tell you it's pretty irregular. If it's a holiday weekend, if it's raining, if it's this, if it's that, it's irregular. That I never know. I never know if it's going to be a big week at church or a small week. I never know if I plan a big day, half of my congregation is going to be out of town on something else. I never know. And it's the rule is that new church attendance is irregular. And that's what it is. I grew up in a time of perfect attendance pins. That we were only allowed to miss 2 Sunday schools a year. If we missed none, 1, or 2, we could get our perfect attendance pin. That's a little bit of grace in there. It's about all the grace there was in the church I grew up in. But got a little bit of that. And I ended up with a 12-year perfect attendance pin. Because we were always there. And I didn't know at the time it's because we were poor and we couldn't afford to go anywhere else. But it was important. We were always, if the doors were open, I was at church. But it's not that way anymore. And that kind of leads us into the next one. Affluence and travel have negatively impacted church attendance. That we are just a more affluent society. And I didn't realize at the time growing up that middle class was probably a pretty good stretch for me. You know, lower middle class, probably more like it. We never took a vacation. I didn't see the ocean. I mean, raised in Nashville, Tennessee, I didn't see the ocean until I was 19 years old. I mean, we didn't go to the beach every year. And I'm going to church with people who are going to the beach 3 times in the summer now. And they're a whole lot further from the beach than you are. And we're just affluent. We're able to do a whole lot more. And so we're choosing other things over church attendance. And the travel has come in. And spinning off of that, number 3, children's activities have greatly increased. Oh, man. And it seems like such a good thing. Seems like such a good idea. It seems like such a loving thing for a parent to do, that I want my child involved in this and I want them to be the best at this. So we're gone every weekend somewhere, involved in a tournament, something, some kind of training. Or there's practice on Wednesday nights now, or games on Wednesday nights now. And so activities with children are taking precedence over thoughts of church attendance. Number 4, guilt has virtually disappeared from our culture. I was, again, raised in a time where every preacher knew how to use guilt. And they could wear you out, and it worked. I mean, if elders went to a preacher, and I knew this to happen, you know, you haven't had any responses in a couple of months. You need to think about your preaching. Well, you know, he'd go for the moms. You know, next Sunday, you know, what kind of mom are you? You know, are you really giving your children what they need? Are you giving them spiritual? And he'd have mothers coming down front like crazy, and the elders were happy, and he used guilt. But, you know, it's hard to guilt people anymore because nobody owns up to hardly anything. You know, it wasn't my fault. It was somebody else's fault. It's society's fault. Whatever. So we're dealing with a time that guilt has about disappeared from our culture. Finally in this, they fail to see the direct benefit of church attendance. They just don't attend because I just don't see that it does that much for me. And, you know, I go and I sit and I listen, and it doesn't really connect with my life. I don't get that much out of it. So why should I waste the time? I have so many other options. Why should I waste the time on something that's really not working? That comes back to our leadership, that we need to be really careful to be sure that we're providing people the food that they need, that we're connecting with some of the needs that they have through Scripture, and showing how Scripture helps them in very real ways. So we need to see more of the direct benefit of church. So in the midst of all these changes, three constants. And it's love for God, love for His people, and love for His Word. Now, I want to close out this session with a story that I think will help illustrate what's going on. It's a story of a little 12-year-old girl named Fanny. She's the middle child of seven children. Mom and dad and 7 kids. 12 years old. Her dad is a pastry chef. He's a baker. Can make any kind of cake. One of those guys that can decorate all kind of swirly stuff and make just beautiful, delicious cakes. And mom, of course, is a stay-at-home mom with 7 kids. And their family is rocking along. They're not, with 7 kids and 1 income, They're not doing great, but they're making it. But then Dad loses his job. Loses his job as a pastry chef. And it's not long before the family gets in trouble. I mean, they're living pretty well paycheck to paycheck. And once he misses a couple of paychecks, they get in trouble in a hurry. And it's not long before they can't pay their house note. They lose their house and find a rental place. And Dad can't find another job like he had. He ends up going to a bread bakery, just a factory, just loaves of bread, and nothing artistic, nothing special about it, just almost minimum wage to run some machine that's making loaves of bread. And he's bringing home a check, but it's not enough. And so the rental house that they're living in, they can't pay that either. And Fanny'd come home from school and all their possessions would be on the sidewalk. And they would be looking for another home. They would find another one, a little rougher part of town, a little smaller house, a little more run down than the one that they'd been moved out of. And it just went in this spiral downward that the dad could not find suitable work. And his solution was to start drinking. And so the little bit of money he made, he drank half of it. And pretty depressed about life and his inability to take care of his family. And the family just went from bad to worse. Got so bad that Fanny had 3 brothers that slept in one bed together. They woke up one winter morning, and had 4 inches of snow on the foot of their bed that had blown in through the cracks in the walls in the house. Fanny had a younger sister who slept on a couch. And in the middle of the night, she was bitten on the eyelid by a rat in the house. And that's just the way it was. That was life. And they were just scrambling to feed the kids, to clothe the kids, and it was just a downward spiral all the time. Well, 12-year-old Fanny finally decided. They were in this rundown neighborhood, and there was a church 2 blocks away, around the corner and down the next street. And she never remembered being in church in her life. Didn't know what church was about. Had not heard stories of God and Jesus. But she just decided that next Sunday morning I'm going to get up and I'm going to put on the best thing I've got. And I'm going to walk up to that church and I'm going to go and see if they have any hope to offer. She didn't tell her parents. She didn't tell her siblings. She just went. And she got into church, and everybody in there was dressed better than she was. And everybody in there seemed like stared at her, but didn't want to speak to her. And then service started, and she didn't understand. She didn't understand the songs they were singing. She didn't understand the prayers, why these guys started praying in this almost different language. Sounded like Shakespeare or something. Didn't understand why they had to do that. And the preacher got up, and he was railing at another church down the road. And she didn't know. She'd never been to that church, didn't know what the problem was, and thought, well, this is just a waste of time. They did communion at that church. And she was sitting on the back row, and as they served communion, they got to her row, and they looked at her, and they just turned around and lined up and came back. They didn't even offer. And she thought, everybody gets a snack except me. She didn't understand that, church was just way over her head. So she just thought, get this thing over with and get me out of here. I was looking for hope. It's not here. So she's ready to head out the back door, and a sweet little elderly lady catches her before she can get out the door. Ask her name. Ask her where she lives. Ask her where she goes to school. What grade are you in? Just pumping questions right and left. And then she said, I teach a class of girls your age downstairs right now, and I'd love for you to come to my class. And Fanny thought, oh, man, yes, that's the last place I want to be, but this lady seems pretty nice, and I can't tell her no. So she went to class. And lo and behold, in class, the lady talked about God and Jesus in a way that Fanny felt some hope. And she said, man, when it's over, I don't really care for the whole worship deal, but I'll go back next week and I'll put up with that to get to go to that class. And so she did, week after week after week, in the Bible class with this sweet little lady, learning more about Jesus all the time. And it wasn't long until she realized there is hope, and it's in Jesus, and I need to be baptized. I need to obey the gospel. And so she made that decision. Wasn't long until her siblings started following her on Sunday mornings to church, found their classes, found their hope, and in time, they obeyed the gospel as well. Now, all of this happened because of one Bible school teacher who cared. And that's the point for us this morning. One Bible school teacher who cares makes a big difference. I know the story of this 12-year-old girl because she became my mother. And what could have been a horrible legacy to pass on to another generation completely changed because one Bible school teacher took the time to interact, connect with this 12-year-old girl that didn't look like she belonged. And the legacy lives on. That my mother ended up being the fourth of 14 children. My granddad found something he was good at. And I've got aunts, uncles, cousins, second cousins in the churches all over Middle Tennessee who their parents became believers, and they raised their children to be believers, and they're raising their children to be believers. You know, I've got another generation coming up that I've got 2 sons in ministry. How would that have happened without that teacher? So what I want to leave you with before we take a break is that whatever age group you're teaching, I want you to realize, I want you to be aware that God can put somebody in your class, a child or an adult, who needs good news, who needs hope from you. Be prepared every time. Be prepared every time you teach. Be prepared every week. Pray for that. Pray for God to put that person in your class and to open your eyes where you can see them, because they need the hope that we as Christians have to offer. That's our privilege as teachers. It's our privilege. It's not a duty. It's not drudgery. When you look at the power we have as teachers and what God can do through a willing teacher, it's amazing what we could do. So I'll leave you with that. Take a 10-minute break. I've got 5 till. Can you be back here at 10 after? I've got books up here and curriculum. You're welcome to look through. We're gonna look at these. We're gonna use these in the third session. But if you can get back here at 5 after, and we all need to start together on this next one because it is interactive. Okay. So if you can be back here at 10 after, you can head back for refreshments, restroom, look at materials. All right. While you're finding your way in, hopefully at the place that you are sitting, I tried to find, there was a warmer spot on the pew. I tried to leave a sheet. So you should have a sheet that says you've got personality. If you don't have that, I've got 3 or 4 extras. But we're going to all start together on this in just a minute. Don't get ahead of me, but find a pencil or a pen that you can use, and we'll go to work on this in just a minute. This the first session we looked at just trying to see how teachers can make a difference and inspire you to be the best teacher that you can be. And just the fact that you're here today, giving a half a day of your time to try to learn and improve, it's a good testament to you. I appreciate you being here. This next session, we're going to focus on the students that we're all trying to teach, all different ages. And the things that we'll look at, they're going to apply no matter whether you're teaching preschoolers, elementary, teens, adults, older adults, it doesn't matter. All of this stuff that we're going to look at in this session is going to focus on the students that we're trying to reach with God's Word. Okay? We about got everybody in, and everybody has a sheet that says you've got personality. All right? So we are ready to go. Let's jump in. I want you to take a little quiz with me. And in this quiz, what's on the screen that you probably can't see from where you are is exactly what's on your paper in front of you. And here are the instructions. That each one of those blocks has 4 statements in it. And I want you to pick the one of those 4 statements that is the most like you, okay? Some of them are going to nail you. It's going to say, oh, yeah, that's me, no doubt. Some of them you're going to have to think about a minute. Some of them you might say, well, this one and this one sound like me. Which one sounds the most like you? And put a circle around number 1, 2, 3, or 4 in that section. So let's go through it together so that we all finish at the same time. So here we go. We'll start at the top left. Are you a good delegator, a good encourager, a good listener, or a good worker? Which one of those would you say is the most like you? And put a circle around that number. Okay, you got it? Let's move down the line. Which one of these is most like you? Are you bold and daring? Are you happy and carefree? Are you pleasing and kind? Are you cool and distant? Circle the one of those that is the most like you. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Which one of these would you be most likely to say? I will lead them. I will persuade them. I will follow through. Or I will get the facts. Circle the one of those that is the most like you. All right, everybody keeping up? All right, next section. Are you decisive, enthusiastic, team player, or analytical? Which one of those is the most like you? What? Analytical. You just like to analyze situations, dig in deep, and figure out how things work and why they work, and that's it. If you haven't circled one of those 4 yet, you can eliminate decisive and move on. I narrowed it down for you. All right, bottom of that column, are you competitive, optimistic, non-emotional, or conscientious. Which one of those four is the most like you? Circle it. Circle that number. Okay? Everybody caught up? Let's go to the top of the next column. Which one of these is most like you? Are you a risk taker? Are you emotional? Are you steady? Or are you systematic? Circle the one of those that is the most like you. 1, 2, 3, or 4. All right, move down the line. Which of these is the most like you? Are you an innovator? Means you're figuring out new ways to do things. Are you an innovator, a peacemaker, patient, or thorough? Circle the one that is the most like you. All right, next set of 4. Are you direct? That means you got something on your mind, you say it, you don't beat around the bush, you're direct with people. Are you direct, talkative, predictable, or precise? Circle the one that is the most like you. All right, we're almost there. Next set, are you strong-willed, trusting, loyal, or cautious? Circle the number of the one that is the most like you. This final set, none of the terms are complimentary, but you got to pick the uncomplimentary that you think is the most like you. Are you domineering? Are you gullible? Are you too lenient? Or are you critical? Circle the one that you think is the most like you. Okay. Everybody get finished, first of all. Okay, we're all done? Not done?
So I'm more than one.
Huh? You just got to pick the one that's the most like you. Okay. All right. Here's what I want you to do next. You should have 10 circles on your page. At the bottom of your sheet, there's a number 1, 2, 3, 4, and a blank beside each one. How many number 1s did you circle? Put that number in the blank. How many number 2s did you circle? Add those up and put them in the blank by number 2. How many number 3s? How many number 4s? And you can check yourself when you add up your number 1, 2, 3, and 4, it ought to add up to 10. Okay, so take a minute and do that. Add your numbers. I'll feed my drinking problem. All right? Everybody finish that part of it. You got your add, number 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Here's what I want you to do next. Some of you will have a tie between 2 numbers. Some of you will have more of one number than the other 3. If you get a tie between 2 numbers, just pick one. I don't care. But here's what I want you to do. I'm going to tell you what I think I know about you just from what you circled on your sheet. And what I want you to do, I want you to move from where you are. And if you circled more number 1s than anything else, I want you toward the front right here to come and sit with other people who circled more number 1s. If you circled more number 2s than anything else, I want you right here in the middle behind them. Okay? Yeah, you can take it, and if you circled more number 3s than anything else, how about middle of this section here, and number 4s you can come up in the middle section here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Fours. All right. All right. Got number 1s, number 2s, number 3s, and number 4s. Okay? 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Everybody happy with where you are? You won't be happy in a minute. All right. Let me tell you what I think I know about you just by where you're sitting. And we'll just take you one at a time and go through. And I realize that probably maybe nobody here was 10 of one number. Anybody get that? I'm married to one of those.
Which one?
I'll tell you later. If you knew her long, you would know real quick. But most of us are a blend of these. That you got some mixing and mingling. So in my description of what I think you are, it's going to be tempered because you've got some other numbers going too. Okay? But I think if you've done a good job, an accurate job of assessing yourself, you're going to tell me that you're probably sitting at the right place. And some of the things I'm going to tell you about your group are going to hit home with you. Not all of them will, but some will. And so we'll just start. You 3 groups will have fun for a minute, okay? You won't. But your time is coming, all right? In a book called The Two Sides of Love by John Trent and Gary Smalley, there's a description of personality types. And this is, the book was written for understanding your family, understanding your spouse, understanding your children and different personalities and what motivates people differently than what might motivate you. And they did a clever thing. They assigned animals to each of these 4 groups to help us just get a little picture quicker. And so we'll do that. I'll call you number 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. I'll also call you by your animal name. But you're going to hopefully learn a little bit about yourselves as we go through this. So the number 1 group, Trent and Smalley call the lions. They have a naturally dominant personality. And they typically have take-charge personalities. They're fine to work under other people, but if things look like they're floundering around, a number 1 will say, just get out of the way. You take care of that, you take care of that, you get this, you get that, and we're okay, okay? And they don't mind doing that. Some people are way too timid to take control and boss people around. The number 1 lion doesn't have a problem with it. They can take charge pretty easily. They have a natural self-confidence about them. Not all people have this. There are a lot of people that live their whole lives in self-doubt. I'm not sure I can do that. I'm not sure I can handle. These people think they can handle anything. Okay? If it can be done, I can figure out a way to do it. And it's just good. Psychologists call it ego strength. That they have good, doesn't mean they're egotistical, but it means that they have a lot of confidence in their own abilities to figure things out and get things done. They are take control people. Is that what it says? No, I can't hardly see that. They are task oriented. It means if you give them a job, they're going to run through brick walls to get it done. Whatever it takes to get the job done, lions are all about that. Okay? Here's some more. They're straightforward. They don't beat around the bush. They got something on their mind, they'll tell you. They don't like the way you're doing it, they'll tell you. You know, they're pretty plain spoken in general. Don't care a lot for the details. I got the big picture here. You take care of this detail, you take care of that, you take care of that, and I'm going to leave you alone. You don't need to report to me on every detail. I don't want to hear it. I just want to know that the task is going to be completed by the deadline. They tend to be extroverts. Let's talk about extroverts and introverts for just a minute. It has nothing to do with how much you talk, but it has to do with your energy level when you're around other people. That extroverts get charged up around other people, get charged up when they get to talk to people, interact with people. They're the kind of people that if they're together with other folks, they go home and it takes them a while to wind down because it's charged them up. And the lions tend to be extroverts. They tend to be risk takers. That, hey, you know, doesn't matter that I've never seen this done before. Let's take a chance. Let's see if it will work. And they do that because they have good self-image, good ego strength, because failure doesn't bother them that much. If I tried and it doesn't work, then it didn't work. Okay, we'll try this now. Some people, if they try it and it fails, it just crushes them. I'll never try it again. I'll never lead anything again because what I tried didn't work. Not these folks. They're risk takers. If they think it's a better way to do it, they'll give it a try. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't work, we know that doesn't work now. They can be confrontational. They'll get in your face if things aren't going the way that they think. Your time's coming. Your time's coming, folks. Okay? But they can be confrontational. They have to kind of bring this down a little bit. They're typically opinionated. They have opinions about just about anything you want to bring up. They know the right way. They know the best. And they're pretty free to share it. Okay? All right. They're not big on patience. Okay? They want it done. They want it done right now. And not the most patient people in the world. And if they're not careful, they become controlling or come across as bossy. Okay? Now, this is a God-given personality that has to come under the control of the Holy Spirit. And all of us have the same problems, just different names. Okay? So, does this come close? Well, let me do this. Bible character, the Apostle Paul is this kind of personality. I mean, he doesn't take anything off of anybody. He's a big picture, task-oriented. I'm going to get the gospel to the whole world in my lifetime, whatever it takes. Beat me, put me in prison, shipwreck me, whatever you want to do, I'm going to get the job done. I'm task-oriented. Don't get in my way, John Mark. I don't have time for quitters. You know, isn't that it? That's that kind of personality. I'm on a mission. Don't get in my way. You either get in line behind me or get out of my way. It's kind of the Lee Iacocca thing from years back, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And that's this mindset. I know where I'm going, and if you want to be with me, you better get on board and get moving. Okay? So the Apostle Paul was that kind of personality, was his major thing. And what really drives these people is the need to be respected. They're not as concerned about being liked. Not being liked crushes some people, not them. If I think I'm doing the right thing, I think I'm going the right direction, say what you want to say. It doesn't bother me. All I ask is that you respect my leadership. And if you do that, we're going to get along fine. Now, does that sound anything like you guys? A little bit? Anywhere? Okay. Okay, it's coming to you. It's coming to you. All right. Let's move to our number 2 group. Here we come. Here we come. Number 2, Trent and Smalley call otters. All right? You ever been to a zoo? The animals could care less that you're there, except the otters. And it's like they're performing for you. Hey, look over here. You know, I'm rolling on my back. I'm doing flips. Hey, over here. Pay attention. So they are otters. They're influencers. And let me say about the number 1s. I want to try to remember to do this as we go around. It's been interesting in doing this all over the country, the kinds of jobs that people end up in based on their personality. It's real easy for you guys to be entrepreneurs, for you to own your own businesses, for you to manage people. It just comes really easy for you. So a lot of people gravitate that direction where they have control over a lot of people. Okay? And then I'll move on back to these folks. All right. The otters' characteristics. They are sociable. They love to be around people. It's punishment to be alone. Love to be around other people. They are naturally talkative. They will talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime. In the checkout line at Kroger, it doesn't matter. Anywhere, anytime. They're ready to talk.
I know that not everybody's looking back at me by myself, but I'm just saying I just want to stand up and just let my face be known.
Okay.
So maybe not stretch your neck as much.
Were you 10 for 10? All right. All right. Sociable, talkative, outgoing. I mean, they just love to meet new people. They make great greeters at church. Just to see new people coming in. They love to be around people. They are natural-born encouragers. They are the cheerleaders of the world. They love to find you doing something good and giving you a compliment on it. They love to find you wearing something that really looks good. That's your color. That's them. They want to tell you. They tend to be team players, that they like to get jobs done as a part of a team rather than working alone. Working alone is really hard for these people. Put me on a team. Give me some people I can talk to. And we'll get the job done. They're peacemakers. They don't like friction among other people. And they do what they can to try to get people to get along. And you're both saying the same thing just in different ways. And then get your hands off my throat. But they always try to be the peacemaker in this. They are persuaders. They are the people who try the new things and then want to tell everybody about it. If a new restaurant opens up, they're the first people to go, and they're talking about everything there. And because they want to try to influence you to experience the same thing that they experienced. Typically not the most organized people. It's because they're spending so much time in relationship and talking that they lay stuff down everywhere and then can't find it when they need it. But tend to avoid conflict, that they're not in your face kind of people like the lions are. But if they hear something doesn't sound quite right, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt. All right. Sensitive, did I go too far? Okay. Sensitive to peer pressure. They really want to be liked. These people don't care. Might care a little bit, okay. But these people really work hard to have you like them. They like to be liked. So, Bible character is the Apostle Peter, who's quick to speak, who's always kind of out there, for good or for bad. And what they really like is to be liked by other people. Okay? Did I hit any of you? This is a larger group of twos than I usually have. I'll talk about that in a minute. So let's leave. And you are extroverts as well, that you get a lot of energy from being around people, okay? You are not task-oriented. You are people-oriented. That if I give these people a task and I say I need it done by December 1st, it will be done by December 1st. If I give you a task and say it has to be done by December 1st, it'll be next March, but you'll have a great time. You'll have a great time getting there. It'll be a fun ride. But you won't get it done, okay? All right, let's go to the folks in the back, the number threes, and see what we get here. Trenton Smalley called these the golden retrievers. They are the steadies of the world. They are the worker bees of the world, just the folks who quietly get it done, kind of like your faithful old golden retriever. They love stability. Don't rock my boat. I like it the way it's been. Don't be shuffling things up. Don't be changing things. I like it the way it's been. Now, you might have a better idea, but I don't know what your better idea is going to look like. I know what now looks like. I can deal with that. Leave it alone. So they don't like, they love stability, which means they don't like change. They are dependable people. In general, if a number three tells you they're going to get the job done, you can pretty well take it to the bank. They're going to get the job done. And see, I went right by and I didn't tell you what kind of jobs you end up in. Because you are natural-born people and persuaders, a lot of people end up in sales jobs, public relations, that you got to talk to people a lot and persuade people. Well, whatever sales. I mean, sales fits your personality, okay? So I'm back over here to the threes again. Dependable. They love routines. They have a routine for everything. That, it's the same, do everything in the same order every day. And they love that. That's not boring, that's good to them. It's comforting because they have a routine for everything. Always do this part first, then I go to that. Always drink half of my coffee and then I eat my toast. And It's just crazy stuff that they do the same thing all the time, and they're okay with it. They are very loyal. They're loyal employees. They're loyal in families. They're loyal in churches. And it's hard to run one of these people off. If you got a number 3 for a friend, you've got them, because it takes a lot to turn one of these people away from you, because they will stick with you no matter what. They are orderly because they like their routines. They tend to be very orderly people. Everything has its place, and if you use it, you better put it right back where you got it. They are predictable, almost to a fault. Every church I've ever been a part of the Sunday morning routine is going out to eat after church on Sunday morning. And sometimes I would get hung up, in a conversation, and my wife would ride with somebody else, and I'll catch up with you later. And she knew what to order. And it's that way too. That whatever, these number 3s, they're going to eat what they ate last time. It doesn't matter how much new stuff's on the menu. I'm going to eat what I ate last time until you mess it up so bad I can't eat it. Because we're very predictable. They like controlled environments. Don't do well in chaotic situations. Don't do well when things look like they're getting out of control. Don't do well in jobs that have a lot of stress to them. They wouldn't make good emergency room people. Just too much unknown going on there. Tend to be introverted rather than the extroverts on this side of the aisle. They tend to be introverts. Doesn't mean they can't talk, but when they're around people for a while, they're ready to shut down. That I'm going to get home, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to veg a while. Just veg out. That I've had enough people for a while because I'm introverted. They tend to be very careful, that they think things through. They look before they leap. They're just cautious about life in general. They don't handle change well, and it's because they like their routines. So when changes come along, when changes have to be made, they're kicking and screaming. I liked it the way it was because I knew exactly what was happening in the way it was. You put them under a lot of pressure, you can't get a good verbal fight out of them. They'll clam up on you. Just, if it looks like it's getting out of control, I'm done. Come back. We'll talk about it when you settle down, but I'm done. Bible characters, Abraham, just good old steady, plod along Abraham, go to the land I'll show you. Is this it? I don't know. Just keep plodding along. Keep your head down, keep plodding along. And what these folks need is to feel safe. And not the respected thing, it's not the liked thing. I just need to feel safe, that I'm in some kind of controlled environment that I feel safe and comfortable in. Now, this time I will remember the jobs that go with these people. I found a whole lot of school teachers in this bunch. They kind of like that regimented life of a bell rings to start, and I go to lunch at the same time every day, and I know when my holidays are way in advance, and everything is kind of scheduled out. So I find a lot of school teachers in this. I find a lot of clerical people in this. In blue collar areas, I find a lot of factory workers in this group that can do repetitive jobs over and over again, and it doesn't drive them crazy. They kind of like it. They'll find the best way, the quickest way to do a repetitive job over and over and over all day. These people will be in the insane asylum by the end of day one, okay? Because they can't handle. It's got to mix it up, you know. But those number 3 folks like that. Okay, does that sound anything like you guys? I'm getting a lot of nods, but no verbal comments. They clammed up on me. They clammed up on me. All right. Save the best to last, he said. We'll see. All right. Number 4. Trent and Smalley call them the beavers. They're compliant. They want to do it by the book. And I'm not sure where the beaver thing comes from, but I think it had something to do with beavers building dams. And floods could come or man could come and knock the dam down, and the beaver will just build it right back. They're gonna do what they're programmed to do. So here we go with them. They love accuracy. That if you're going to do it, if you're going to say it, you better get it right. It better be accurate. Okay? I don't want any slipshod kind of stuff. I want accurate information. I want detailed information. You get in a conversation with the number 4 people, you'll get more detail than you ever wanted. I mean, you know, don't you have a Reader's Digest version of this? No. If you're going to talk to me and I'm going to open up to you, you're going to get the whole thing. And it's never a straight line. It's always a zigzag. And, you know, well, that reminds me of it. And then, you know, it takes a long time to get a story out. They love to follow instructions. They're the reason that instructions are put in grills and stuff like that you got to put together, because they actually read it. Most of the others just start putting it together. These people actually read instructions. All right? They tend to be very analytical people, that they look at information and they analyze what does this mean, what's going on, what's really behind all this, why is this working this way? And they analyze conversations. Well, I know he said that, but I wonder what he really meant when he said that. And it's that analyzing kind of personality. They are task-oriented. So here we go. We've got extroverts on this side, introverts on this side, task-oriented in the front, people-oriented in the back. Is it any wonder that the church is messed up? You know, it's hard to get this train moving in the same direction. So, task-oriented and introverted, that they're fine working alone. A lot of these people end up in jobs that they're just at their desk, just drilling all day long, just drilling deeper and deeper and deeper. And they don't need to talk to a lot of people. They don't need a whole lot of social going on. Just give me my project and shut the door on your way out. And kind of gets it, okay? They're very cautious people. Because they're very analytical, they analyze every step, every possibility that could happen for every decision that they make. So they always know worst case scenario, and so they're really slow decision makers. If the church were to catch on fire right now and I didn't know the way out of here, I'm looking at the lions. They'll figure it out. I'm not following these because they're pulling out calculators and, you know, these people will burn right here. But these folks are going to get up and go, and I'm right behind them. Okay. They tend logical, typically have very logical minds, and it drives them crazy when people say things and do things that aren't logical. It just, how in the world do you come up with that? You know, what can't you see that there's no logic in what you just said? But, you know, they're logical all the time. They tend to be perfectionists, that a job is not done until it's done 100% right. and they'll take whatever time it takes to get it to that 100%. Sometimes they're so drilled in on the detail that they miss the big picture, that sometimes my part of the project, I'm drilling so deep that everybody else is waiting for me to finish up my part, and it needs to have already been done, but I'm not willing to let it, I haven't analyzed it enough to let it go yet. So these are the folks that usually hold up the projects. And when it's ready to go, you can bet that it's right. But it might be a decade before you get it. So they sometimes miss the big picture. Typically hard to read these people. They don't show. I mean, number two is you are the expressive people that whatever you feel, you show. Yeah? You are the exact opposites. That you're overjoyed right now, aren't you? I could tell. I could tell. But, you know, it's just it. They just kind of keep everything under cover, and you don't know. Don't know, am I connecting? Am I not? Are they happy with me? Are they mad? I don't know. They just don't show a whole lot. Bible character is Moses. And, you know, the typical thing here is when God called Moses at the burning bush, I mean, Moses, he didn't want to obey. He wanted to analyze. Well, what if? What if this scenario? What if they asked me who sent me? What if? What if? And he's wanting to analyze this thing from every situation. And God's patient up to a point, and then he says, just go. I'll be with you. Just go. We'll work it out. We'll work it out on the road. But just go. I don't have time for you to analyze this thing to death. But that was Moses' characteristic. What these folks need is to be right. You don't have to like them. You don't even have to respect them. Don't have to feel safe. But you want to crush one of these people? Find a mistake that they made. Find a mistake and point it out. And they're crushed for life. What? I'm not sure. I did that so long ago, I'm not even sure now. Let's think about that. How does Ruth fit in with this personality?
She's a tree. She's loyal.
Yeah, I think they just tried to get women to do this too. And the women are a whole lot harder, and primarily because there's not as much written about the women as there is about the men. It's a little easier to find the men that fit the characteristics. But
She made sure it was taken care of. She was concerned for servants. She knew where everything was. She was analytical about what she did, according to if you're a virtuous woman, you're like Ruth. So I can see that.
okay. Yes.
I don't know what it says about the future of our congregation. Four of the elders are in this group.
You got 4 elders in this group. All right. And we need to talk about that. Has everybody got their notes with them? When you moved, did you take your notes with you so that you can, if we get into some other stuff, you can start taking notes? Okay. Well, let's, for the rest of this session, let's quickly go back to your note sheet to session 2. Students appreciating the difference. This is what this is all about. It's about realizing that God has made us all different. And we'll apply that to teaching in just a minute. So get your note sheet out, and let's get some obvious facts about all this personality stuff. Okay? The first thing is that God made all these different personalities. I mean, He didn't make one and then it morphed into something else and then morphed again. God made us the way we are. He put us together in our mother's womb, and He means for us to be exactly who we are. He gave us our personalities. So God made all of these different personalities, and God can use all these different personalities. That He didn't say, well, you know, I made all this, but I made all these, but the one that's really the most useful is this one. And this is the one I'm going to use. No, he made them all, and He can use them all. Your personality will affect your teaching. As we've looked at different personalities by where you grouped yourself this morning, can you see that you are the kind of teacher that you are because of the personality that God has given you? Can you see that if you're in this section, that probably your class wants to drill deep? Want to get in there, we want to dig out all the nuggets in here. Can you see that if you're a teacher, that you want the class to be fun? You want everybody to have a chance to talk. We want a lot of activity. And it drives these people crazy. Because that's not the way they teach, that's not the way they learn. So, your personality affects your teaching, and it also affects the way that you like to learn. These people, they're the last ones in the world that want to do, let's do role play in class today. God, she's going to shoot me now. You know, that's not what they want to do. These folks love it. And if you got kids that are number twos in class, they love that. But not everybody loves that. So it affects your teaching, it affects the way you learn. And finally, your students have all these different personalities that you do. I mean, it's across the board. And if you got 5 or 6 students in a class, you're liable to have all 4 of these personalities represented in one class. What do you do as a teacher? How do you, and then you got a different one. How do you go about teaching to all these different personalities? So let's take a look at that for a minute. Let me muddy the water up. You've heard this probably all your life in teaching. 3 major learning styles. First one is auditory. Some people learn best by what they hear. That if they hear it, they remember it. That's why we're in an auditorium. Auditorium. Because what you're going to do most in here is listen. It's hard to do much of anything else, any other kind of teaching in here, because this is an auditory place. Second major learning style is visual, and it's pictures and charts and object lessons and those kinds of things. If I can see it, I can remember it. If I hear it, I'm not sure, but if I see it, I remember it if I'm a visual learner. And the third one is kinesthetic tactile. Kinesthetic means moving around, and tactile means using the senses. Okay? So some people have trouble learning unless they can move around. Some people have trouble learning unless it's a hands-on kind of experience. That they can't sit, they can't listen, they can't just read it and get it. They have to get their hands on it. They have to take it apart and put it back together. You've all had students, if you've taught children, you've all had students in class that it was almost impossible to get that child to sit in a chair. They'd want to stand up, they got to move. Every congregation I've ever been a part of, I always thought God just spread out people with kidney problems among all the congregations. That there was always a guy or two who couldn't make it through a sermon without getting up and going to the bathroom. I thought, good grief. And I go to another congregation, and there's another guy that can't sit through a 30-minute sermon. Well, his problem is not his kidneys. The problem is he's a kinesthetic tactile learner. He can only sit so long before he's got to get up and go out in the foyer. And he's taking in all he can take in, sitting down. He's got to move. So some people are wired that way, and they have to move. Unfortunately, for my growing up years, only the kinesthetic tactile method of teaching was never used. If you were a kinesthetic tactile learner, you had learning disabilities. Yep. You need to be diagnosed. You need to get on some meds and zone you out where you can sit for an hour. And we're recognizing now it's just the way, one of the major ways that we're built. Okay, real quick, we're gonna try to wrap up here for another break. How learning styles change with age. Most preschoolers, their best way to learn is kinesthetic tactile. That you turn a preschooler loose, they're gone. I mean, they're exploring their world. They're touching everything in the room. They will not sit in a chair unless you get them in one of those little lockdown chairs around the table. That's the only way you can keep them still. But they learn best by moving, by handling, by touching, by everything they get. Everything they grab is going to go in their mouth. They're going to look at it. They're going to shake it. That their kinesthetic tactile is their best way to learn when they're preschoolers. By the time we move to elementary, time we move to elementary, we shift toward the visual. That reading is a visual means of learning. Writing is a visual means of learning. Lots of pictures. You go into elementary classrooms in public schools or private schools or Sunday schools. Lots of pictures, lots of color everywhere, because that's their best way of picking up their world. It is by pictures, by color. So a lot of them are visual is their best means of learning. When you hit the teen years, you go through a strange little auditory phase. I hit it when I got old enough to date, and there was nothing I liked better than being on the telephone. And that was a big deal. With only one phone in the house, that was a big deal. Hey boy, you've been on the phone for an hour and a half. I can't talk to anybody for an hour and a half, but I could during those teen years. And another weird thing about the teen years being auditory years, I bet if you look at your favorite music, it's the music from your teen years. Because that's when I was the most auditory. And I don't want that stuff the decade after my teen years. I don't want stuff now. Give me my oldies. Because that's what I listened to when I was a teenager, and it's what's embedded in my brain. And it's that way for most people when we were in that really auditory phase. All right, one more thing. We're going to take a break. How does all of this shake out as adults? Where do our learning styles go as adults? All right, 40% of all adults, their best learning style is visual. The next one's going to surprise you. 40% of all adults, their best style is kinesthetic tactile. And of this 40%, more of the 40% are men than are women. You probably think that's pretty high. But I think it says a whole lot. Well, let's just get all three of them here. That leaves 20% that are auditory learners. And of that 20%, more are women than are men. Women tend to be better auditory learners than men are. So, wives, it's not that your husband doesn't listen to you. He doesn't listen to anybody. I mean, we don't hear anybody. Okay? It's just, sorry. It's God's fault. It's the way He made you. So don't take it personally. It's just we're not good at that. We're not good at listening. We'd rather tinker. We'd rather get our hands on something, take it apart, and try to put it back together. So you think about this, and we don't have time, but it is something good for you to think about. How we do church for adults. And how much emphasis we put on auditory learning when it's the least effective. So, just chew on that. Here's what I want you to do as we're coming into our last break before we're done. We're gonna come back in here for a third session. What I want you to do, and I'll give you to quarter after. Do your bathroom breaks, drinks, whatever you need, but try to get by these front rows and try to find a piece of curriculum that connects with an age that you're teaching, an age group that you're interested in, and I want you to just pick it up and take it to your seat for the beginning of the third session. Whatever looks like you. Adult stuff in the middle, children's on both sides. And find a piece. It can be a visual aid pack. Open it up. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at the material and see. I saw that. I want you to see how these learning styles and maybe how personality styles are addressed in real curriculum, okay? And then we'll have a chance to share about that in just a second. So let's get our break going. You might can go to 20 after, okay? But let's be ready to roll. way home. So it'll be good. By the way, I'm supposed to lead singing tomorrow night at church. I'm not sure that's going to happen. But getting through today is good. God has blessed me with enough voice to get this out, and hopefully one more quick session, and we can be done. You've picked up some materials, hopefully that close to what you like to teach or you're interested in teaching, and I want you to be looking at that to see how the material addresses different personality styles, different learning styles, and if you can find an activity and say, hey, this lesson does this, and it's really good for that kind of learner, then give you a chance to share that in just a minute. What I like to do, got a little housekeeping before we jump into session 3 big time. Again, I didn't say what the number 4's occupations usually end up as, but as you might expect, it's something really technical, that they're accountants, they're engineers, computer programmers, quality control people that kind of like the detail, okay? They gravitate toward these kinds of jobs. And I always get asked in the break between session 2 and session 3 what personality I am. Well, so what do you think? 2. 3. 2. 2.5. Okay. I was introduced to this, and it's been 30 or more years ago, and have taken the test many times, a more detailed version than what we took today, and I've always ended up the same thing. And for number 1, I have nothing. Nothing. For number 2s, I have about that much. For number 3s, I got a bunch. And number 4s, I've got almost as much. So I'm heavy 3 and a lot of 4. I don't have anything over here. So tells you I'm an introvert. Okay? Yes?
I heard somewhere that most ministers tend to be introverts.
Most ministers tend to be introverts. I don't know. Haven't heard, but I've known a lot who are. But that's that. And let me say this about this too, about the personality thing. That we all work outside of our strongest personality all the time. If you're a parent, you better learn to be a lion. Your kids will run you out of the house if you don't learn to be a lion, because you got to be a lion sometimes. And we have to work in all these different personalities. If you've got a job that you say, oh, this is just my perfect job, I just love it, it probably fits your personality. And to do another job that's different from that stresses you out. If you've ever had a job that job just stresses me like crazy, it's probably because it doesn't fit your personality at all. You can do it for a while if you have to, but it doesn't give you joy. It doesn't make you comfortable. But we all work outside of our personalities to get done the things we need to get done. But our sweet spot is where our personality is strongest. Okay? I think we also got a birthday today. And fingers are pointing. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, just go ahead and stand up. All right. So y'all be sure and take care of your birthday girl today. All right. This verse that I have on the board here, What I'd like for you to do is stand up. And as we went through the last session, we looked at the different learning styles, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, tactile. Did you kind of figure out, hey, this is me? This one is more me than the other. So what I want to do is read this verse, and when you hear your best learning style, you can sit down, okay? That which we heard from the beginning, that which was from the beginning, which we have heard, anybody? Which we have seen with our eyes, which we have looked at and touched, this we proclaim concerning God's word of life. God is aware in dealing with us that He's made us all different. And some of us are reached better by one method than by another. And so God comes at us in every kind of way. God comes at us visually in what we see in creation. He comes through us auditorily in what we're able to hear of the Word. He comes to us in ways that we can touch and feel and know that He's real. So God is doing the master-teacher thing with us. We need to turn around and do the same thing with our students. Okay. So real quick, let me give you. We're going to look at curriculum, and I've lost my screen back here, and that's okay. So I'm not turning my back on you. I'm just have to see this. Natural learning cycle. Most of the curriculum that's out there today by a whole lot of publishers is based on this basic idea. As we began to learn more about how the brain worked, and parts of the brain that you stimulate this part, and your hand goes, and or this part is speech, and all the different things. As we learn more about brain function, we were able to transfer that into education. That this is the part of the brain we need to stimulate to get the most learning. And so public education did it first, and then Christian education came behind it and said, hey, if it's a good idea for public education, it's probably a good idea for Christian education as well. So they began to build curriculum based on these models of how the brain works. And both of the curricula that are out here that are published by 21st Century and most of the ones that are in the market today use a form of this same method. So here's the learning cycle. You start out with step one. All students need to be motivated. And the purpose is that when you come together in a class, you got to link your students' life, their home, friends, school, the lesson focus. And the teacher has to be a motivator to get everybody on the same page. And you know as well as I do, if you're a teacher, that when you come together in class, everybody wants to talk about everything except the lesson, right? And your job as a teacher is to get them focused, is to motivate them. Hey, this is what we're going to look at today, and it's going to apply to your life. And so there's some activity that might even seem like a waste of time. It might even seem trivial, but it's in there to try to get everybody focused and on the same page. The folks who struggle most with getting started are the number two people who have their own conversation going. They don't need a teacher. They don't want a teacher. And you got to get their attention pulled into the lesson or you'll never get your lesson taught. Okay? So that first step is the teacher's a motivator to pull them all together. And it's an attention grabber. All right? Step two, all students need to learn the facts. And the purpose is to present the Bible information to your students. Teacher is the information giver, facilitator. The number 4 beavers love to drill deep in the Word, so they eat this part up. It's the best part of the lesson. So it's get them into the Word. You see the picture. Step 1, you end up with an empty spot, Bible-shaped spot in your heart. And step 2 is, hey, we're going to show you how God has an answer to that empty spot. And we're going to help you fill that today. Step 3 is all students need to practice. And the purpose is to provide a variety of opportunities to practice information they have just acquired. The teachers, the coach. The ones that really need it are the number 3 golden retrievers that are more cautious. And they might believe what the lesson says, but, oh man, I just don't know if I could really do that. I'm not confident enough to just go out and do that. So step 3 is a practice step, and it especially for children's classes where you get a chance in a safe environment to practice whatever the lesson's about. Let me give you an example of this. Say you're teaching 2nd, 3rd graders, and you're teaching a lesson that the theme of it is Jesus was a helper. He wants you to be a helper too. Okay, and whatever Bible story where Jesus helped somebody, and it would fit here. But the lesson you're trying to get across, Jesus was a helper. He wants you to be a helper too. So you have your lesson and you study that passage where Jesus is actually helping somebody. And then it comes to step 3 and the teacher says, Jesus was a helper. He wants you to be a helper too. I brought snacks today. I brought cookies and juice. Who would like to help me pass out the plates? I will. Oh, it's good. Jesus was a helper. He wants you to be a helper too. Who would like to pass out the napkin? I will. And so they practice doing what it is that they need to do, that the Bible lesson is encouraging them to do. They do it and they succeed in a safe environment so that they have more confidence to go out and do it in the world, which leads us to step 3. 4. All students need to apply the Bible to their lives. And the purpose is to encourage your students to apply what they have learned to their everyday experiences. The Lions really need this. In my years in the church, I've learned that Lions hate meetings. They hate to talk about stuff. Talk. When are you going to do something? You know? And I've known a lot of them that just forget class. I'm going to a nursing home Wednesday night, and I'm visiting with old people and reading the Bible and singing to them. I'm tired of same old stuff. Talk about it. Want to do it. So step 4 is the application. When you look at what we've done, especially in our fellowship over the years, in my lifetime, where have we been strong? Step 1, 2, 3, or 4? 2. That's been our focus. Bible facts. We're going to open the book. We're going to see what God has to say, and we're going to learn that. Typically, teachers look at the attention grabber step of the lesson. We don't have time for that. Forget that one. We're jumping into Bible study because we're in Bible class. We're in Bible school. We're jumping into the Bible study. Forget the introduction. Forget the little fun thing. We're not here to have fun. We're here to learn. So we jump in, and then we're in step 2 in exploring the Bible, and the first bell rings. All right, and we're not finished exploring the Bible yet, and the second bell rings, and we're still at the only step we've looked at in the lesson, step 2. That's typically us. I don't remember a single Bible lesson growing up that had an application? Now, this is what the Bible says now. This is what you need to do. Not a 1. I can't remember a 1. But I knew a lot of Bible. I just didn't know what to do with it. Didn't know that it applied because I didn't have teachers who put any emphasis, and the curriculum didn't put any emphasis on the application. You look at the curriculum that maybe you got your hands on it today. Look at the curriculum you're using and follow that teacher's manual. It will be step 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you as a teacher need to adjust the time. You're in charge of the time in your class. And you need to go through the cycle to hit all of that. And be sure that you get to an application at the end of it. If you don't, when I was preaching, I got to thinking in terms of so what? That I'd get a topic and I'd get real excited about, I'm going to preach on this. And then I'd start thinking about, when I finish this, so what? I've delivered this lesson. What do I expect to happen? So what? What do I want? What do I want as a result of this lesson? So what? And every time you teach, you ought to be thinking with a so what in mind. That I'm teaching this lesson, so what? So what does it mean to my students? So what do I expect of my students? What do I expect them to change as a result of this lesson? So what? So all of these lessons are built leading toward a so what. And as a teacher managing class time, you got to get to the so what because it's important. So go back to our second, third helper. He wants you to be a helper too. You practiced it in class. I'll help with the napkins. I'll pass the trash can around. You can put your trash in here. I'm a helper. In step 4, the teacher would say, okay, now Jesus was a helper. He wants you to be a helper too. How can you be a helper at home this week? How can you be a helper at school this week? Well, maybe I could help my mother set the table. Or maybe I could take the trash out without being told to. Or maybe I could pick up all of my dirty clothes out of the middle of the bedroom floor and put them in the hamper. And then a good teacher, when the kids are coming in the next week, will ask, how did you do on being a helper last week? Before you get class time started, how did you do? And I'm telling you, that positive reinforcement, you did it and you get praised for it the next week, they're going to be looking to do whatever gets them praise. Whatever gets rewarded gets repeated. Okay, that's a John Maxwell rule. Whatever gets rewarded gets repeated. That if you want to change behavior, then reward good behavior. And it'll get repeated. If you ignore it, it won't get repeated. If they don't get anything out of it, they won't do it again. That was wasted effort. But what gets rewarded gets repeated. Okay. So get to your so what and make it through your lesson. One of the things that we talked about last night during our supper time together was teaching is a servant leadership job. We talk about it when we're looking for elders all the time now. We talk about elders as servant leaders. I don't want a boss. I don't want a dictator. I want a servant leader. Well, teaching is a servant leader position. You don't have that class so that you can do everything you want to do your way all the time. You have that class to be a servant, to figure out the best way to serve the students in your class, children or adults. The best way to get God's message into their hearts. You are a servant. You put your desires, your favorite stuff on the back burner. and you think, what do I need to do to reach him? What do I need to do to reach her? And what am I willing to give up of me to serve them? And that's what we go for. That's servant leadership. And real teaching is servant leadership. It's not about, it's my class, we do it my way. And the thing about, as we teach, if your congregation is big enough, you probably have a choice of adult classes. That, there's an auditorium class, all I got to do is sit and listen. There's a discussion class over here that if I go, there's going to be, I might have to discuss a little bit. But I'm telling you, when you're in the 3rd grade, you're in Miss So-and-so's class, and you don't have another choice. That's it. That she's got to connect with you or you don't get anything. And you are that person. You are that person that needs to make sure that they are connected to God's Word. No matter what you have, I don't like teaching that way. I don't like doing crafty stuff in the class. Makes such a mess. That's just not me. It's not but you got kids in that class. That's the way they learn best. You don't need to do it every week, but you need to do it. That I don't do the singing stuff, the little songs and you better figure it out, because there are people in your class that's their best way to learn, and we have to give up ourselves as teachers to reach everybody we're trying to teach. It's not just about me going through and punching the clock and saying I'm putting 35 minutes in today, and when the bell rings, I'm done. It's about I'm investing myself in these students. And so we serve. It's a servant leadership position. All right. I want you to look at your material. I don't know if you've had any time at all to look at that. And if some of you can start talking right now, that'd be great. If not, I'll just give you a minute or two of silence to examine your material. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to look for material, something in your hands that shows, I understand that some people are visual learners, some people are kinesthetic, tactile learners, some people are auditory learners. Or how you see that learning cycle, how you see it working in the material you're looking at. It's easier to see in the children's stuff than it is in the adult stuff. Adults are resistant to change, okay? Want to go for one?
Yeah, I was just noticing, I'm a number 4.
Okay.
I think I'm more of a visual learner as well. So the charts and the graphics, things that are put in here, especially I noticed during this adult curriculum from Stafford North, so that stands out to me. I'm drawn to those things.
Okay.
And I know that there are other people who are too, to be able to organize data, information, be able to see it at a glance, take it in. I appreciate that you put some of that.
Okay. Just charts sometimes to help us get through the words. If you can visualize it and you can see it in chart form, makes it easier to learn. And I'm same way. I'm drawn. When I look at a new book, I hate to buy a book online. I want to flip through it, and I want to see, does it have any lists? Does it have I don't really need pictures that much anymore, but does it have things that jump out to me that really summarize really quick so I get a feel for it? I like that. Okay, thank you for sharing. Somebody else? Oh, we got them.
I've got Amazed by Jesus, Volume 1 by Mark Hines.
Okay.
And once again, a great deal of visual content, charts, maps, pictures, in terms of what I would consider tactile aesthetic. The application, go out and do this. How can you take this and take it out of the book and out of the classroom and make a difference?
Okay.
And don't be surprised if you see this
Mark has done, I think, three different books for 21st century, and they're all that same basic layout, and he does a great job. Okay, thank you for sharing. Had a hand back here. Yes.
This is for upper elementary where it starts, at the beginning of the lesson, asking the children what they know about the origin of the earth, and then going into the Bible. So they get to express what they've learned, unfortunately, in school.
Well, what do you know about the origin of the earth? Let the class tell you what they think they know, and then step 2, you go to the Bible. What does God say? And it's a good lead into the lesson, and helps shape their thinking. Yes.
I have a visual packet for the younger elementary, and there is auditory stuff as well as visual stuff in here for the
Okay.
kids and teachers. And the Bible verse also has clues, visual clues for what some of the words are in the Bible verses, so that's good to help with the kids. And then there's some movement kind of things that are depicted in the pictures for what the children can do to help them live out the Bible verse and to live out the lesson. So if I were a Sunday school teacher, I would be very interested in teaching this lesson.
Okay. And in most of the curriculum, there's more stuff than you can do in a class time, but you get to pick and choose. And every kid might not get totally what they want for the whole class, but everybody gets something that fits them. If the teacher is willing to be a servant leader, you got to be willing. Okay? Good stuff. Yes?
Well, mine's also early elementary, and it's a make it, take it. And it's most of the stuff, is stuff that they can take home, and a lot of it is where to put it, where you're going to see it throughout the week or however long, like this one is, focusing on do not worry about what you wear, but it's having you help them make a sachet that you hang in your closet. So when you're going to pick out, stressing out what you're going to wear, whatever, you see that, okay, I'm not supposed to worry about that, but, or different things, and where to put it at your house, to remember, so the repetition of the lesson.
Okay.
For that age is
Good. A reminder at home of what was in the lesson. And let me say this real quick about take-home papers. I mean, they're kind of the bane of church custodians because they end up everywhere except where they're supposed to be. But the design of those is to connect the teacher's lesson to the parents. That this is what we talked about in your child's class today. And if it would be really powerful if you tried to reinforce that same thing. If you knew that we taught Jesus is a servant, Jesus is a helper, he wants you to be a helper too. And if you would be aware that your child is trying to help and praise that child for helping, that makes God so happy when you're a helper like that. If you can use the same phrase that your teacher used, and it's connecting the home to the church. And we're doing it like they're two totally separate things because teachers and parents don't realize that that's the tool. The take-home paper is the tool to tie that together. And I've had teachers in the past that don't even try to send those home with the kids. They mail them. I mean, it's a stamp, but they mail them home every week. And so Monday, Tuesday, they get the mail of the lesson, and there are things in there for the child to do, but there's instructions in there for the parents. So it serves a dual purpose to connect home and church. And that they shouldn't be disconnected. That church is here to help what's going on at home, not to substitute. Okay? Yes?
About one of your reading studies, your Women in the Word studies, and I like that the book invites you to journal in it, more or less. It's not just filling in fact questions or yes or no questions, it's thinking questions, journaling questions. And for me, writing is a very tactile experience in addition to being visual. I definitely learn better if I've written something down because I'm engaged in
Cassandra Martin did 13, 14 of these, and they're all, it's an in-depth Bible study for ladies, and there's 4 days of 20 minutes a day work to get ready. So you don't go to class saying, I wonder what the teacher's going to talk about today. You've studied it, and you're not there to be fed. You're there, you've studied the Bible, and other people in the class have studied it too, and you have your perspective on it, and they have their perspective on it, and it all comes together in a whole lot more meaningful class than just, hey, I'm going in a blank slate. I hope my teacher prepared. Everybody prepares, and it's been good, but it's work. It's a little bit of work. Okay? Yes?
I got a craft book for preschoolers because that's predominantly who I work with. And I think it's great because then they have something visually and then they have something tactically that they can engage with so that the lesson means more to them instead of me just talking at them. Because I always ask questions to let them know I'm going to ask questions, and if they like answering them, it is amazing how much is still lost.
Yep.
And so seeing it and feeling it, and even if they don't take it home, they engaged at that moment to you see the lesson. And I like that it has stickers that the children get to place because kids love colorful stickers and has hearts and, Bible picture stickers.
Yep.
And that's good.
It's just so much creativity built into the curriculum that teachers used to have to scramble to try to find. It's there. When you buy the material, it's there. But it's no good if you're not using it. If you're just still, hey, we're on step 2, open your Bibles and wait for the second bell, then you don't get anything out of it. But examine what you've got and figure out, how can I use this to better connect with my students and get them to understand God better than they do right now. Okay? Ooh, way in the back. You're going to speak way up.
So I teach upper elementary, fifth grade, and I have the upper elementary teacher's guide. And I noticed there was one lesson where it's having the students look at current advertising. I guess whether it's maybe print but maybe online, and applying Bible principles to like, okay, what is this ad trying to sell you? How are they saying it'll make you feel? What are it's going to do for you? And so to me, that stuck out. Definitely 5th and 6th graders sort of applying it, so you've got that application. I think it would be a good vision for visual learners. Maybe even good for, the number 4s, the analytical folks, like analyzing, but they do, you kind of have to take something and say, okay, this is how we're supposed to live, or how any biblical principle. And then it's like, well, what is the world throwing at you? How can you apply that then? Does this fall in line with the Bible, with what we're learning or not?
Yeah. Well, one of the big things about good curriculum is that it encourages critical thinking. A lot of the teaching that I had growing up, I learned to parrot the right answers. And in adult classes, even today, I can ask questions, and the first hand that goes up is the hand that remembers what they were taught in 7th grade. And they give me that answer, and they're done. Because that's the only answer they learned. They never really thought critically about it. No need to change my mind, no need to rethink, to reword, to reapply. And good curriculum encourages critical thinking. That you learn to take everything and run it through the filter of God's Word. And that's why you want to put as much of God's Word in your head as you can, because it becomes the filter that we need to. There's so much trash out there. So much trash. And if you don't have your filter cleaned and ready, you're going to get a lot of junk inside that's going to end up wrecking your life. And so that critical thinking aspect of it is really, really important. Okay.
So it shifts the focus from just an observational fact base for Ruth's relation to
Ruth is one of those really rich 4 little chapters, and it's not just a little historical story that's thrown in the middle of nowhere without good purpose. I mean, it presents the whole kinsman redeemer idea, that Jesus had to become a kinsman to us to save us. And there's so much more than just the story, whither thou goest, I will go. So much more than that. I mean, it's rich. I could teach 8 or 10 weeks on those 4 chapters, easy, because it's so rich. And we just need materials. We need people who are thinking to challenge our thinking, to help us see things that I've just looked over for years. It happens all the time. We're almost out of time. Real quick, let me ask you this. And I don't know if I got a slide for this or not. Oh, let's do this real quick. This is good. 1997 study by the University of Texas revealed that people remember 10% of what they read, 20% of what they hear, 30% of what they see, 50% of what they see and hear. And here's an interesting one. 70% of what they say. That if you can teach and get somebody to tell you back what you just said in their own words, they have a 70% chance of hanging on to it. So you want that feedback to be sure they understood what you were saying. And 90%, people remember 90% of what they do and say. So really, really good encouragement for us as teachers to give it our very best. Confucius said, 5th century BC, what I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand. And that's what we want to get our students to do, to apply. All right. Just real quick, and we are right up against out of time. What's the takeaway? For different people, different stuff. I don't expect you to be able to take all of this and do it in the morning in class. But hopefully there's some of it that jumped out to you that you might say, hey, I can start doing that pretty quick. So just real quick, anybody, what's your takeaway? Yes, ma'am.
My takeaway is to be a servant leader in my classroom and to give up, because I like my comfort zone because I'm that personality, but to give that up so I can reach all of my students.
Okay. Yeah, servant leader teacher. I love that. Yes, ma'am. Okay, Bible knowledge is great, but application is where it's really at. One other, anybody? Yes.
I want to tell something that happened in class. You never know what a child is so simple what you're teaching. This couple right here has a granddaughter. How old is she now? You know this daughter? I had in 2- and 3-year-old class. And one Sunday, I was teaching telling about Jesus died on the cross. And I said, Jesus died on the cross. And when the class was over, when the parents would come and get them, I'd always say, can you tell Mother or Daddy what we talked about? So the daddy came to pick up this little girl, and I said, can you tell Daddy what we talked about today? And right off the bat, she said, Jesus died on the railroad track.
All right. All right. Oh, man. Jesus died on the railroad track. It's all a matter of, you got to get it right. But you never know how your students are picking up on what you got. Got to be careful as a teacher. One more thing. What you got?
Ask a question about, we usually have 40, 45 minutes in class, trying to get all 4 of these, at least trying to be aware of, trying to get best you can, these 4 different personality types, these 3 different styles of learning. Do you have any advice for the pacing of the class, of having discussion, but keeping it focused?
The student book for the children will tell you
Yeah.
that step 1, you can take between this many minutes and this many. A lot of it assumes that you have more time than we typically do. We talked about this some last night too. I think we hurt ourselves. Studies have shown that churches that do Sunday school second, do worship first, Sunday school second, have better Sunday school attendance. And the reason is that if you do Sunday school first, if anything starts going haywire on Sunday morning, the parents just say, we're not going to make it for Sunday school, let's just shoot for church. And it's gone. But church worship is the big deal. And if you put that first, people will make the effort to get there. And then while they're already there, then it's easy to transition into classes, and you already have teachers there. You're not waiting for the teacher that's running late, that doesn't have her copies made of this or that, running down the hall trying to get to her class, already has a class of kids ricocheting off the walls, and no teacher in the class. That's the drawback of Sunday school first that you fix when you go to Sunday school second. And that helps you control your time better. If you know I'm already there and I know the bell is going to ring at a certain time, and everybody who was here for worship is already in class, ready to go. So that helps. On the adult level, you just got to figure it out. How far can I go with this before I need to say, okay, shutting off the discussion, let's be sure we've got the point of this lesson tonight. And I do that. I appreciate all the discussion, but I want us to make sure we go home with what God wants us to know. So hold your comments a minute. Give me 3 minutes, 5 minutes to wrap up. And so we do it. I'm over 3 minutes, 4 minutes. You want to close us out? I'll sit down and let you have it.
Okay. I just want to thank Tom. I think he did a great job. Again, thank Joan for pulling this together. The takeaways, there were a lot. I mean, we were here for 3 hours. There was a lot of information put out there. I hope as many of us as possible can take this information, take it back to our classrooms, but I really hope something's been said today or over the course of pulling this together to motivate each and every one of us to want to take the time to dedicate and to give back some time into our school, into our Sunday school classes. Take the talent that God has given you and let's share that. Let's apply that. Let's find some way to motivate ourselves individually to get back in those classrooms and share our knowledge and the opportunities that we have. Anything else from an announcement standpoint before we dismiss? Because I do want to dismiss us with a word of prayer.
Whatever materials are here, they're yours.
Okay, the materials are available, so if you saw something you want to pick up and take with you. My wife has already told me to put her piece back, and I said, well, I've got 3 here, and I'm stealing them if that's what I've got to do, because I'm taking them home with me. I'm teaching a high school, junior high in the fall, and I was telling one of the mothers that I said, I haven't taught a high school in 40-something years, so their anxiety is probably not near as great as my anxiety about going back into that environment, but looking forward to it, and I certainly picked up some pointers today that's going to help me in that class. One other takeaway I got from this, and I hope y'all caught it too, and it was in that first session, and that was the story about his mother and the impact that one person can have. I'm not an educator by profession. I was in group 4. I'm an accountant, Tom. You nailed me. But one of the most influential people in my entire life, and I'm nearly 70 years old now, was my 3rd grade teacher. I love that lady till the day she died. I've told her. And I'm not one of these that steps out of my comfort zone very often to hug somebody and say, hey, I really appreciate what you did for me. But every time I saw that lady over the course of her life, I always repeated that. I told her, I said, you had more impact on me in the 3rd grade than any teacher I had before or since. And I truly meant that. I mean, this lady really motivated me in a lot of ways. So the influence you teachers have, and I'm speaking primarily to our WCA teachers as well as those Sunday school teachers, but the influence you have, it cannot be overstated or over magnified. It is truly life-changing. And I love you for it, appreciate you for it. Anything else? If not, Tom, thank you. Look forward to seeing most of you hopefully back for church and of course our Sunday school. Those that are visiting with us, and I know we have a lot of visitors, we're certainly glad to have you, and glad you could come and participate in this workshop with us. If nothing else, I'll dismiss with a word of prayer, and everyone have a safe journey home. Gracious, loving, and holy Heavenly Father, we're so thankful. We're so thankful, Father, for the talent that men like Tom have, for the willingness of those men to step out into this world, to spread your gospel, and to help each and every one of us to be better teachers, to help each and every one of us be motivated to teach. Father, it's a sincere prayer that this morning something's been said to motivate and encourage each and every one of us to not only be better individuals, better teachers, but to be better people, to be better Christians, to be willing to go out into this world and make disciples of all nations, to spread your gospel, to teach each and every opportunity that we have to do so. Father, we've got so much to be thankful for, but we're most thankful, Father, for your Son, for his life, his burial, his resurrection, the promise we have of salvation. Father, it's a sincere prayer that this morning we've done things that would be pleasing to you and will strengthen us. We pray, Father, that you be with us, give us of our sins. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.